Have you ever seen someone so full of arrogance that they thought the world belonged to them, only for fate to humble them in the blink of an eye? Stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you will stay on your mind long after the video ends. And before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because stories like this, real stories of justice, resilience, and truth, deserve to be told, and I'll be bringing you more of them. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon in the small town of Rockville, just outside Chicago. The kind of day where the sun poured down lazily, families pushed strollers along the sidewalk, and an ice cream truck's tinny melody carried through the air. On that particular street, outside a laundromat and a barbershop, stood Denise Carter, a 34-year-old nurse. Denise wasn't remarkable by the flashy standards of the world, but she was remarkable to the people who knew her. Her patients who whispered, "Thank you," when she sat by their hospital beds, her elderly mother whom she cared for every weekend, and her 8-year-old son Marcus, who thought she hung the moon itself. That day, Denise had just stepped out of the corner grocery store with a bag of apples and bread in one hand, her phone tucked against her ear. "Yes, Mama, I'll be home by 6. "Don't you worry," she said, her voice calm, reassuring. And then, out of nowhere, the rumble of engines. 3 bikers came tearing down the narrow street, loud, reckless, leather jackets glinting in the sun. They weren't outlaws in the Hollywood sense, but they carried themselves with the same kind of swagger. Helmets half-strapped, tattoos climbing up their arms, laughter booming over the roar of their bikes. They weren't supposed to be on that residential street. Everyone knew it. Mothers pulled their children closer. Shop owners frowned. But no one dared speak. No one except fate. As the bikers slowed at the intersection, one of them, a stocky man with a shaved head, caught sight of Denise. Maybe it was the way she stood there with quiet confidence. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't flinch at their noise. Whatever it was, his arrogance flared. He swung his bike closer to the curb, sneering. "Hey, sweetheart," he called out. His buddies laughed. Denise glanced at him, unimpressed, and turned back to her phone. And that tiny act of dismissal was more than his fragile ego could take. In one shocking move, he stretched out his glove hand and slapped her across the cheek. The sound cracked like a whip. The grocery bag tumbled. Apples rolled into the gutter. Denise staggered, phone clattering onto the sidewalk. Her hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide, not from pain but from disbelief. The street froze. Mothers gasped. A barber stepped out of his shop, fists tightening around the cloth in his hand. And the biker? He threw back his head and laughed. His 2 friends laughed with him. To them, it was a game, a moment of power. But then, just 1 second later, everything changed, as if the universe itself had seen enough. The biker roared his engine, meaning to pull away in triumph. But the front tire of his bike clipped one of the rolling apples on the street. Just a simple apple, bright red, round as fate itself. The bike swerved violently. He lost control. In a split instant, he crashed into his buddy's wheel. Both men toppled like dominoes, metal screaming against asphalt. The third, swerving to avoid them, skidded and flipped. In less than a second, the street was filled with the sound of collapsing bikes, grinding metal, shouts of pain, and the stunned silence of onlookers. The slap that echoed just moments ago was now replaced with groans and curses as the bikers lay sprawled across the road. One clutched his leg. Another tried to drag himself up. His helmet cracked. Denise stood frozen, her cheeks still stinging. She hadn't raised a hand, hadn't shouted back. Yet here they were, humbled in front of everyone. Marcus, her son, came running from the barbershop, where he had been waiting. "Mama," he cried, grabbing her waist. She bent down, holding him, steadying herself. The crowd erupted. Some laughed in disbelief. Others muttered, "Serves them right." A man filming on his phone whispered, "Ain't no justice faster than karma." One of the bikers spat, trying to save face. It was an accident," he shouted, but no one was listening, because everyone had seen it. The arrogance, the slap, the instant downfall. The police arrived minutes later, sirens cutting through the heavy air. They cuffed the men, charging them not only for reckless driving, but for assault. As they were hauled into the cruiser, one of them glanced back at Denise, but she didn't meet his eyes. She stood tall, her hand no longer on her cheek. She looked at Marcus instead, whispering, "It's okay, baby. We're okay." That night, when she tucked him into bed, Marcus asked, "Mama, did you see how they fell? Was that God?" Denise smiled softly, brushing his curls. "Sometimes, baby, the world has a way of balancing itself. You don't always need to fight back with your fists. Sometimes the truth reveals itself all on its own." And in her heart, she knew that every person who had stood on that street would carry the same memory: arrogance punished by its own hand, cruelty met with its own consequence. For days afterward, the video of the incident spread online. The title? Biker Slap Woman, Instant Karma. It was watched by thousands, then millions. Comment after comment praised Denise's quiet strength. Others marveled at the timing. But for Denise, the story wasn't about virality. It was about Marcus seeing, with his own eyes, that you can face cruelty without letting it break you, that justice, in its own mysterious way, finds those who think themselves untouchable. And that is the story. So, let me ask you, have you ever seen someone get exactly what they deserve in a way that almost felt supernatural? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. And before you go, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, because stories like this need to be told, and I promise, more are coming.